In October 2016, 27-year-old Ryan Walker vanished without a trace on a rugged section of the Forney Creek Trail in Great Smoky Mountains National Park. For 7 years, he was presumed dead, possibly the victim of a sudden accident or a predatory animal in the deep wilderness. But in March 2023, he walked into an ordinary gas station in Bryson City, alive, but barely recognizable. What he told police once he was able to speak horrified even the most seasoned investigators. Where had he been for those 7 years, and what really happened to him amid the mysterious Smokies? Before diving into the story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the latest cases. On October 14, 2016, at 1:20 p.m., 35-year-old Ryan Walker left his short-term rental apartment in Knoxville, Tennessee. According to his brother, who met him that morning for a quick chat about weekend plans, Ryan appeared completely healthy and excited for the 3-day trekking trip he had been preparing for weeks. He was wearing a lightweight waterproof jacket, dark trekking pants, and carrying his action camera setup along with a personal water filter, familiar gear he typically used on long trips. Ryan's goal was to complete the full Forney Creek Trail loop in the Great Smoky Mountains area, a route notorious for its steep terrain, complex stream network, and rapidly changing weather conditions, where thick fog can obscure visibility in just minutes. He drove his black SUV out of Knoxville, checked his navigation device, and headed along the route to Clingman's Dome Road, the starting point of his hike. That was the last time his family saw him before he entered the wilderness. According to the plan he shared with his brother, the entire trip would take no more than 3 days, and he was expected back in Knoxville by Sunday evening, in time to prepare for work the following week. At 3:42 p.m., surveillance cameras at the trailhead captured the final confirmed image of Ryan as he stepped into the forest with a heavily loaded backpack, while fog was beginning to settle and strong winds moved in due to a cold weather system entering the Smokies area. At that point, no further phone activity was recorded beyond an automatic data sync message from a few hours earlier, which raised no suspicion since most of Forney Creek lies in a dead signal zone. The alarm was only raised around 6 p.m. on Sunday when Ryan still hadn't returned. His phone rang briefly, then went to voicemail. By 9 p.m., after hours of failed attempts to reach him and confirmation that Ryan had not shown up at work as scheduled, his brother decided not to wait for any further procedural deadlines and immediately reported him missing to the National Park Service, specifying the search area as Great Smoky Mountains. Immediately after receiving the report on the evening of October 16, 2016, NPS prioritized the case and activated Search and Rescue Level 2 protocol, standard for disappearances in complex mountainous terrain. By 5:40 a.m. the next morning, a temporary Incident Command Post ICP was established at the Clingman's Dome Road parking area, near where Ryan's SUV was located. NPS Rangers, along with assigned rescue personnel, held a quick briefing, reviewed the last camera sighting data, and determined the most reasonable time frame for loss of contact. Based on the collected facts, the ICP established a preliminary search radius of 3.5 kilometers around the Forney Creek Trail, accounting for the average travel speed of a heavily loaded hiker and the adverse weather conditions that could slow progress. Search teams were divided into groups along major trails, prioritizing steep sections, stream crossings, or areas prone to slips and falls. NPS deployed K9 units specialized in locating missing persons, while drones were used for aerial sweeps to identify areas of unusual canopy color, ground disturbances, or foreign objects that might stand out in the natural landscape. By mid-morning, a helicopter equipped with FLIR was dispatched to conduct thermal scans along the mountainsides, aiming to detect body heat signatures or recent human presence in narrow valleys. The sharp nighttime temperature drops made residual body heat detection via FLIR especially valuable. However, the first day's aerial scans yielded no notable signals. On the ground, Ranger teams noted extensive damp soil, thick moss, and leaf litter covering the surface, making visual tracking extremely difficult. Nevertheless, all main trail segments, rest points, and stream crossings within the radius were thoroughly checked. By the end of the day, the ICP compiled data from drones, FLIR, and ground patrols. The results showed no direct evidence linked to Ryan. No scattered items, matching footprints, or any mechanical or biological signals suggesting his movements in the final 24 hours. The first day of searching ended without actionable discoveries, significantly complicating efforts to pinpoint Ryan's initial direction of travel. On the second day of searching, with the search area expanded per ICP directives, one SR team, moving along the south slope of Forney Creek, noted an unusual area of compressed soil just over 20 meters off the trail edge, where the leaf litter was pressed hard into the moist soil below in an irregular oval shape. Unlike typical human footprints or rest stops, the location was marked, measured, and reported to command for detailed mapping. Continuing downslope, the team found a cluster of broken branches lying across the path, with many sharp, fresh breaks indicating lateral pulling or scraping force rather than gravity or wildlife breakage. Coordinates of the broken cluster were recorded, along with notes on break direction, angles, and average heights for comparison with simulated motion of a loaded person or dragged object. About 400 meters higher as the crow flies, another SR team reported a faint shoe print on mud near a tributary of Forney Creek. The size and sole pattern did not match the trekking shoes his family confirmed Ryan was wearing. The print was too faint to determine gender, weight, or direction of travel, but was still significant enough to be photographed at the scene and added to the master map. All these findings were carefully reviewed in a short afternoon meeting at the ICP. Rangers analyzed each clue based on geographic position, weather conditions, the likelihood of others being on the trail during the relevant time frame, and relevance to Ryan's potential movements. The compressed soil area was assessed as possibly within the path of someone in distress if he had left the trail, but lacked follow-up signs to confirm it was Ryan's route. The horizontally broken branches suggested impact force, but did not indicate whether the source was human, animal, or natural flow. The anomalous shoe print was considered more analytically valuable, but not distinctive enough to establish timing or direct connection to the disappearance. Ultimately, these three signs were added to a list of anomaly markers, recorded anomalies for use in composite analysis, but were not treated as direct evidence of Ryan's location or status at the time of disappearance. During detailed review of the anomaly markers recorded from the second search day, a SAR team moving along the unusual compressed soil area on the south slope of Forney Creek discovered an additional 27 centimeters length of gray paracord, partially buried under leaf litter. It showed no signs of long-term weathering, but was not in an obvious position, suggesting it may have fallen or been dragged from its original spot. The cord was collected, sealed, and logged per standard procedure before being sent to the ICP. Near the broken branch cluster, a ranger noticed a dragged soil patch exposing dark brown moist clay underneath, with a horizontal scrape mark about 40 centimeters long on the surface, indicating pulling or friction from a heavy object moving close to the ground. The ranger cordoned off the area, collected soil samples, and photographed the scene for comparison. Near the anomalous shoe print by the stream, a flat contact compressed mud sample was taken, where the pressed surface lacked shoe sole patterns and instead resembled the bottom of an object or soft equipment. These three pieces of evidence were transferred to the NPS lab in Gatlinburg that same evening, where technicians conducted initial analysis. For the paracord, microfiber testing showed common synthetic nylon, not the specialized type Ryan typically carried on treks, and the clean cuts at both ends did not match cutting tools his family confirmed he owned. The dragged soil patch was examined via soil compression testing to estimate impact force. Results indicated a pulling force higher than typical foot travel by a hiker, suggesting a heavy object dragged or slid across the surface, but no blood. Biological tissue or attached organic material linked it to the missing person. The flat compressed mud sample was checked for grain structure and mineral type. Results matched local streamside mud conditions, but contained no human DNA or distinctive material traces. After composite evaluation, technicians concluded that none of the three pieces of evidence could be definitively tied to Ryan or directly related to his journey before disappearance. Relevance was classified as not excluded, but not confirmed. All evidence was logged into case file GSM 2016 RW31 chronologically and grouped for future cross-referencing, though at the time of collection they were regarded as isolated data points lacking sufficient value to narrow the search area or alter strategy. After 4 continuous days of searching with data gathered from ground teams, drones, and other technical sources, the ICP compiled all information to construct the most plausible hypothetical models of what could have happened to Ryan Walker from the moment he appeared at the trailhead until complete loss of contact. Based on the 3:42 p.m. camera footage from October 14th, and the phone data sync a few hours later, the operations team established a tentative timeline of the distance Ryan could have covered in the first 4 hours, including average speed for a heavily loaded hiker in thick fog and strong winds. Combining this with topographic maps, rangers determined Ryan was likely deep into the Forney Creek area before nightfall, but no traces were found along the main trail or side branches. The previously recorded anomaly markers, including compressed soil, horizontal branch breaks, and the anomalous shoe print, were incorporated into the analysis as variables that could either support or confound the search model. From this synthesis, investigators established 3 open hypotheses. Hypothesis 1. Accident. Ryan may have slipped on a steep section or been swept into a stream area while attempting a fast water crossing, leading to incapacitation or death without clear surface signs. Hypothesis 2. Lost orientation. In thick fog and complex terrain, Ryan could have veered off the main trail due to disorientation, entering dense brush where evidence is very hard to leave or locate within the limited search radius. Hypothesis 3. Third-party intervention. An unmatched shoe size print, drag marks, and horizontal branch breaks suggested possible abnormal movement involving non-animal or non-natural impact force. However, this hypothesis lacked direct evidence and could not establish timing of any intervention. After reviewing other less plausible scenarios, such as Ryan leaving the park without notification or abandoning his vehicle, or being attacked by large wildlife without biological traces, investigators eliminated them. Following this filtering, the 3 main hypotheses remained as open directions capable of explaining the existing data without pointing to any specific conclusion. The timeline still had a critical gap. No evidence indicated which direction Ryan moved after the camera capture, and no direct clues linked him to the anomaly markers, leaving all 3 hypotheses in balanced contention as searches continued into subsequent days. During the expanded review phase on the 5th day of searching, the analysis team at the ICP conducted a full examination of all data from wildlife trail cameras installed within a 5-7 kilometers radius around Forney Creek, to determine if any images captured Ryan during the time he could have passed through the area. One camera positioned at the junction of 2 tributary streams recorded a faint human figure around late afternoon on October 14th, but low resolution, poor lighting conditions, and distance made the image impossible to verify as Ryan or any specific individual. Technical enhancement was ruled out due to insufficient original detail, and the data was therefore classified as no identifiable value. At the same time, a ranger patrolling near Newfound Gap Road reported hearing a faint engine noise around the night of October 15th, emanating from a deep forest area with no vehicle-accessible roads or service routes running through it. A SAR team was dispatched to the area the following morning, but found no signs of disturbed soil, tire tracks, fresh paths, or any evidence that a vehicle had actually moved through. This made acoustic reflection, diffusion, or terrain-induced distortion far more likely than actual human-operated machinery. During a review of rescue radio data files, the technical team noted a weak, fleeting VHF band radio signal near the estimated time of Ryan's loss of contact. The signal appeared as intermittent noise with 3 continuous pulses, lacking Morse code structure, voice data, or matching any official NPS, SR, or permitted civilian frequencies in the area. After running source triangulation algorithms, the result yielded only a very broad zone due to the signal's weakness, making it impossible to pinpoint or confirm whether the source was human-related or a natural phenomenon. When these 3 data points were synthesized in the end-of-day evaluation, the operations team concluded that although all 3 clues appeared within the timeframe close to Ryan's disappearance, none met the threshold of reliability or verifiability to open an independent investigative lead. The faint figure could not be used for identification. The engine noise had no accompanying physical scene evidence to confirm it, and the radio signal could not be traced to a source. Therefore, all 3 were entered into auxiliary case files with a low-value rating, retained for future cross-referencing if stronger data emerged, but insufficient to justify adjusting the current search perimeter or strategy. After 10 continuous days of searching without any direct evidence of Ryan Walker's presence on the Forney Creek Trail or adjacent areas, the ICP was forced to transition from active SAR mode to a scaled-back phase. Flower-equipped helicopters were reduced, drone flights decreased in frequency, and ranger teams maintained only patrol sweeps along main trails and rechecks of high-risk accident terrain. Over the next 4 days, search efforts primarily focused on deep ravines and stream sections capable of carrying away evidence. Yet no new physical items appeared, and no biological samples, personal gear, or footprints could establish Ryan's movement after the trailhead camera capture on October 14. All anomaly markers collected during the search lacked sufficient distinctiveness to link to any specific individual, and initial lab analyses yielded no identifying value. By day 14, the ICP compiled a summary report to NPS concluding that no reasonable basis remained to sustain active SAR efforts, while assessing that the likelihood of Ryan surviving in the harsh terrain, persistent bad weather, and absence of shelter signs was extremely low. The case was classified under the standard missing presumed dead category, missing and presumed deceased due to no signs of life detected during the standard search window. All loose evidence, search maps, imagery data, and SER reports were encoded and archived in the NPS Investigative Management System under case code GSM 2016 RW31. Officially moved to cold case status pending additional information or new evidence that could alter the case status in the future. Nearly 7 years after case GSM 2016 RW31 was transferred to cold case status, on the morning of March 3, 2023, Bryson City Police received a call from a gas station attendant on US 19 reporting a man who appeared in a state of extreme exhaustion, barefoot, and showing signs of disorientation. When patrol units arrived, they found an individual severely emaciated, with heavily torn clothing and skin darkened as if from prolonged exposure to low-light conditions. The man was assisted to sit down and asked for identification. After several seconds of delayed response, he identified himself as Ryan Walker, matching the name of the victim in the 2016 Great Smoky Mountains disappearance case. Due to his unstable physical and mental condition, officers at the scene could not immediately verify, but noted the self-reported identity and transported him by ambulance directly to Mission Hospital in Asheville. In the emergency department, medical staff conducted initial biometrics, severe weight loss compared to 2016 records, low blood pressure, electrolyte imbalance, and numerous old scars around the wrists and ankles, along with thick calluses on the soles of the feet. When technicians attempted fingerprint comparison with state databases, results were inconclusive due to severe skin peeling, so the hospital sent biological samples for DNA testing to confirm identity. Initial reports and all preliminary data were immediately forwarded to the NPS office overseeing Great Smoky Mountains and simultaneously to the FBI, as the sudden reappearance of someone presumed dead for years raised clear criminal concerns. Bryson City Police completed an on-scene report documenting the man's physical condition and self-identification, then entered the entire matter into federal systems as an event related to an active cold case file. From there, the DNA sample was processed on an expedited basis under NPS identification protocols and sent to federal labs. After 2 independent analyses, the results matched the 2016 biometric records with absolute certainty, confirming that the individual who appeared in Bryson City was Ryan Walker, the same person previously classified as missing, presumed dead in case GSM 2016 RW1. Once identity was confirmed, the medical team at Mission Hospital expanded to a comprehensive evaluation, focusing on biological markers that could reflect survival conditions during the 7-year data gap. X-ray and MRI results revealed multiple abnormalities: 2 misaligned healed ribs, an old untreated ankle fracture that had fused on its own, severely reduced bone density, typical of prolonged lack of sunlight exposure, and vitamin D levels at critically low ranges. Symmetrical scars around the wrists and ankles showed width and depth consistent with repeated ligature or shackle abrasion over time. Scar tissue indicated healing phases, separated by years, ruling out a single incident. Dermatological examination noted hyperkeratosis on the soles and toes, suggesting frequent movement over rough surfaces or prolonged barefoot conditions. Accompanying this were sleep pattern disruptions and light reflex characteristics, typical of individuals living in environments deprived of natural daylight. The patient's circadian rhythm was significantly desynchronized from the normal day-night cycle. Collectively, these indicators formed a consistent pattern. Ryan had endured a prolonged period in a light-restricted space, with low physical activity, restricted bodily freedom, and likely subjected to extended controlled conditions. The medical report concluded that no natural survival pattern in the Smokies region could account for the observed injuries and bodily metrics. The most reasonable conclusion was that the victim had been held in coercive captivity for multiple years. Upon submission of the report to NPS and the FBI, case GSM 2016 RW31 status was immediately upgraded from cold case to active, criminal suspicion, with a new investigative code opened under kidnapping and unlawful detention classifications. Ryan's reappearance, backed by conclusive biological evidence, removed the case from the realm of accident or voluntary disappearance. This provided the first legal basis requiring federal agencies to restart the investigation under the presumption that one or more unidentified parties intervened at the time Ryan vanished in Great Smoky Mountains. Once Ryan Walker's physical condition stabilized sufficiently for information collection, an interagency investigative team comprising NPS, FBI, and hospital representatives began recording initial statements using an objective descriptive method, avoiding emotional probing and focusing solely on spatial identifiers and confinement conditions. Ryan described the holding location as having a low ceiling, with wall and floor surfaces of rough natural textured material, reinforced rather than milled lumber, suggesting an underground or semi-subterranean structure. He recalled a consistently cool, season-independent temperature, consistent with isolation from the external environment. Light intensity was low and cycled artificially, apparently dependent on man-made power. Lights turned on and off at fixed but irregular intervals, noted as indicative of battery-powered or backup electrical systems. Ryan reported frequently hearing steady, continuous water flow, not from a large stream, but resembling a small nearby trickle, allowing investigators to code proximity to running water as a key geographic parameter. Additionally, at certain times he heard a small engine running briefly with low, steady amplitude consistent with a mini generator or air compressor rather than typical vehicular engines. This was designated the mechanical periodic noise parameter. During limited direct contact or overheard speech from close range, Ryan identified the captor's voice as having an Appalachian regional pitch and cadence, including characteristic stress patterns and speaking rate typical of long-term adult residents of eastern Tennessee or western North Carolina mountains. This was coded as suspected regional dialect indicator. When all statements were compiled in technical descriptive form, the investigative team established an environmental parameters list including underground or tunnel-like structure, controlled low-light enclosed space, location near a small running water source, presence of periodically operating low-power electrical source, and evidence of a native Appalachian individual with access to and capability to use subterranean infrastructure. These parameters were used to cross-reference geological maps, stream hydrology data, and areas of previously recorded anomalous activity within Great Smoky Mountains, forming the foundation for subsequent field analysis to identify locations potentially containing a confinement structure matching Ryan's description. With the environmental parameters list established, the interagency team of FBI and NPS Investigative Services Branch launched a comprehensive review of missing persons files in Great Smoky Mountains and adjacent forested areas from 2008 to 2019, focusing on unresolved cases or those lacking conclusive evidence of outcome. From an initial pool of over 20 files, the team narrowed to 7 cases sharing environmental and circumstantial similarities. Cross-referencing revealed recurring patterns. Most victims were last seen near streams or small watercourses where dense root systems and wet rocks could conceal traces. Multiple prior SAR teams had noted unexplained compressed soil areas or drag marks. Notably, nearly all cases left behind no personal items, even items prone to dropping such as water bottles, gloves, or sunglasses. An anomaly uncommon in typical trekking accidents where scattered gear frequently marks incident points. The team reanalyzed each file, flagging matching features to assess the possibility of a common mechanism. Some older missing persons maps showed similar anomaly marker shapes, such as horizontal ground scratches or clusters of broken branches in positions unexplainable by wildlife. Combining these with environmental parameters derived from Ryan's statements, underground structure, near small running water, periodic mechanical activity, the investigative team determined a strong likelihood of an offender profile operating across multiple years in the Smokies, exploiting complex terrain and dense forest cover to abduct victims without leaving easily detectable traces. The joint FBI-ISIB summary report assessed that this pattern did not align with ordinary accidents, did not correspond to large animal behavior, and did not fit short-term criminal acts such as robbery or assault on trails. Instead, the evidence pointed toward an individual capable of trail monitoring, selecting solo hikers, approaching at obscured sections, and transporting or controlling victims without leaving obvious signs. These review findings were incorporated into Case GSM 2016 RW31 as the basis for multi-victim linkage analysis, reinforcing the hypothesis that Ryan's case may not be isolated, but part of a prolonged series involving the same actor. Based on the patterns identified during the multi-case review, the investigative team advanced to high-resolution terrain analysis by integrating periodically collected high-resolution LiDAR data acquired by NPS for geological research purposes. LiDAR was used to strip away the dense forest canopy of Great Smoky Mountains, removing vegetation noise and revealing true ground-level topographic structures. Analysts overlaid LiDAR data onto elevation maps, stream flow maps, and simulated feasible offender travel paths for dragging or transporting victims in dense forest conditions. Focusing on Ryan's description of small but continuous water flow, the team targeted low-flow tributary streams where steady sound would be present but not overpowering other noises. Scanning within these zones, a notable anomaly emerged as a near-uniform rectangular feature in the thick forest south of Forney Creek. A structure with unnaturally straight edges, inconsistent with the region's natural geological formations. LiDAR data showed the feature's surface depressed 40 to 60 centimeters below surrounding levels, consistent with a buried or covered artificial tunnel or chamber. From offender movement modeling, the team assessed that a perpetrator would require a site discrete, yet close enough to trails for victim access, while far enough to avoid detection. A reasonable distance was estimated at 1.53 kilometers from potential approach points, aligning with the LiDAR-indicated anomaly area. Hydrologic maps confirmed the anomaly's proximity to a small year-round stable watercourse, matching the acoustic description from Ryan's account. Cross-referencing with slope models showed natural access routes to the site primarily consisted of animal trails or long overgrown paths. This fit characteristics of an individual intimately familiar with Smokies terrain who deliberately avoided main trails. After further analysis of other regional anomalies, the team eliminated over 90% as lacking artificial features or failing proximity to water requirements. The LiDAR-detected structure remained the sole anomaly, satisfying the full set of environmental parameters coded from Ryan's statements. Accordingly, the target area was narrowed to a remote deep ravine seldom visited, outside popular trails yet with terrain stable enough for an individual to construct or conceal an underground facility. With suspect coordinates established, FBI and NPS-ISB developed a tactical approach plan, including outer perimeter reconnaissance to identify safe entry routes, assessment of potential traps or hazardous structures, and readiness of geological technical teams to assist if excavation or ground stability checks became necessary. The approach plan was maintained under strict secrecy to prevent scene contamination or alerting any involved party to the survey area. The interagency investigative team was deployed to the anomaly coordinates early in the morning, moving covertly along the pre-surveyed approach route using topographic maps and LiDAR data. As they neared the suspect point, rangers conducted an outer perimeter check for signs of human intervention. The thick vegetation layer combined with steep terrain concealed surface traces, but anomalies in soil compaction and root distribution indicated that the vegetative mat in this area had been disturbed in the past and then naturally recovered. After expanding the inspection radius, one ranger discovered a flatter patch of ground compared to the surroundings, underpinned by faded old wooden beams. When the leaf litter and dry branches were cleared, they revealed a hand-assembled wooden hatch covered with thick moss for camouflage. Geological technicians assessed structural stability before permitting the hatch to be opened. When the wooden panel was lifted, a dark, narrow descent appeared, wide enough for an adult to pass through and reinforced with rough wooden supports. The technical team shone lights downward and confirmed this was an artificial structure, not a natural rock cavity. After ensuring no toxic gas hazards and verifying structural integrity, the investigative group entered the tunnel in standard order. The interior space was larger than anticipated, a room approximately 3 meters long, nearly 2.5 meters wide, with a low ceiling and earthen walls reinforced by horizontal wooden framing. Light came solely from the team's headlamps, but wall marks indicated the space had once been illuminated by a small electrical source. Thin electrical wiring ran along one corner of the wall, disconnected but still identifiable by function. In the left corner of the tunnel was a crude wooden bed with sagging planks from prolonged human weight. A few loose fabric threads remained on the bed surface and were collected into bioevidence bags for analysis. At the foot of the bed, investigators found a set of metal shackles anchored to the wooden frame with a small padlock. The exterior was rusted, but the mechanism remained intact. This was key evidence and was immediately sealed. On the packed earthen floor beside the bed was a long horizontal wear mark, with even compression over time consistent with a person restricted to limited movement in a confined space. Empty food cans were scattered in another corner, bearing production dates from years earlier, and were preliminarily checked to record their age. Near the right side tunnel wall, a small wooden board attached to the framing displayed continuous carved notches arranged in even groups. The sheer number of notches suggested they recorded days for the captive. The notches were deep, sharp, and evenly spaced, indicating repetitive behavior over an extended period. The investigative team categorized all evidence into 4 main groups. Biological group, including loose fabric threads, samples from the bed, compressed soil samples, and any organic traces potentially containing DNA. Mechanical group, including shackles, padlock, electrical wiring, reinforcing wooden beams and construction materials. Environmental group, including soil samples, moss samples, mineral deposits on walls, and floor moisture. Temporal group, including the day count board, food cans with production dates, and usage wear marks on the floor. All evidence was geolocated, photographed with scale references, and entered into the NPS evidence management system. Upon completion of physical evidence collection, the survey team created a laser-scanned map of the tunnel structure, recording precise room dimensions, depth, entry orientation, and evidence positions. The resulting map showed that the entire tunnel layout, from the slope of the descent, distance to the small stream behind the wall, ceiling height, and reinforcement pattern, matched the parameters Ryan had previously described about his place of confinement. Enclosed space, underground, thermally stable, with nearby running water sounds, and a formerly operational cyclic artificial lighting system. Once the entrance was resealed to preserve the scene, all data obtained from the tunnel was flagged as having direct relevance to Ryan Walker's disappearance and forwarded for in-depth analysis. Biological samples collected from the confinement tunnel, including loose fabric threads from the wooden bed, epidermal residue on the padlock, and microbial tissue residue in the shackle grooves, were sent to the federal laboratory for DNA extraction. Analysis results revealed, in addition to Ryan Walker's DNA already matched from 2016 records, a highly stable unknown DNA sequence recovered from both the padlock and the inner surfaces of the metal shackle segments. When this sequence was compared against North Carolina and Tennessee state criminal and civilian databases, it matched the profile of Thomas Redden, a reclusive resident in the forested area north of Fontana Lake, who had a minor history of land disputes and illegal hunting violations, but no serious violent record. While the DNA analysis team finalized its report, the footwear impression unit compared molds taken from the tunnel with commercial databases. The pattern matched a specialized hiking boot model discontinued about 6 years earlier, primarily distributed through select local stores near the Appalachian Trail. Tracing purchase records in the Fontana and Bryson City areas, investigators confirmed that Redden had bought this exact model in a cash transaction during the year of Ryan's disappearance. The materials provenance unit continued tracing mechanical evidence from the tunnel, specialized wood screws used for frame reinforcement, small-gauge electrical wire cut from civilian spools, and fragments of broken LED lights from inexpensive solar systems. All these materials could be sourced from retail outlets within a 30 kilometers radius of Fontana Lake, and when filtered by production year and purchase quantities, multiple transactions aligned with Redden's customer cards or shipping information, including a solar light order matching the component type found in the tunnel. Data from all 3 analysis groups, biological, footwear, and material sourcing, converged on the same individual. The interagency report identified Thomas Redden as the only person appearing consistently across the entire chain of forensic cross-references, without reasonable exceptions or variants that could exclude him. When the results were escalated to the command team, Redden was officially designated the prime suspect in case GSM 2016 Ardoeo 31, with the highest level of linkage based on independent, yet converging forensic evidence chains, meeting legal thresholds to open a primary subject file and prepare for the next phase of pursuit. Once Thomas Redden was identified as prime suspect, the FBI Behavioral Analysis Unit constructed a criminal profile based on demographic data, residential history, and related environmental characteristics. Redden is a middle-aged man living alone in a remote cabin deep in the forest north of Fontana Lake, with no stable employment, primarily sustaining himself through seasonal labor, hunting, and small repair work in isolated communities. Property records showed he had purchased substantial quantities of materials suitable for underground construction, including raw lumber, load-bearing screws, electrical wire, and energy-efficient lighting equipment. The few neighbors within several kilometers described him as minimally communicative, self-reliant for all needs, using forest resources, and rarely appearing in populated areas. The analysis team assessed that Redden's terrain knowledge far exceeded that of an average hiker, evidenced by the tunnel site selection, located in an obscured ravine, near a small water source, far from main trails, yet close enough for solo hiker access. This is a standard trait of subjects capable of environmental control and exploitation of natural conditions to conceal criminal activity. When compared to the long-term captivity offender profile, many of Redden's features aligned: isolation, ability to construct confinement spaces, trail system familiarity, physical capability, and field knowledge to subdue victims at locations where calls for help are unlikely, and a lifestyle pattern that requires minimal community presence, thereby reducing suspicion risk. Victim selection behavior was assessed as highly opportunistic yet conditional. Most linked missing persons cases involved solo hikers, without companions or detailed itineraries shared, facilitating rapid subdual without obvious traces. The behavioral team reconstructed a plausible activity sequence. The offender approaches a lone hiker in an obscured area, uses terrain advantage or basic tools for control, then transports the victim to a confinement space within a radius he can navigate proficiently. After captivity, the offender maintains control by restricting light, limiting movement, and adjusting the victim's biological cycles to the sealed tunnel environment. This model fits data from Ryan's statements and tunnel evidence. When evaluating the suspect's likely response to questioning, the analysis team classified Redden as the type prone to total denial, evasion of direct answers, or non-cooperative patterns due to long-term reclusive personality traits. If under surveillance, this offender type typically alters routines unpredictably, leverages terrain knowledge to evade tracking, and may react strongly if law enforcement presence is detected near the cabin or familiar forest areas. These predictions were documented to inform approach planning aimed at minimizing risk and avoiding provocation of a suspect with superior knowledge of escape routes and natural terrain compared to most investigative personnel. Once all tunnel scene data was digitized, the investigative team used laser scans and 3D mapping to reconstruct the confinement space and directly compare it with Ryan's descriptions provided during medical and technical interviews. The 3D map showed near-exact matches in length, width, and ceiling height to the restricted movement range Ryan described. Shackle positions, floor wear marks, and padlock anchor points aligned precisely with the daily repetitive motion paths he referenced. The small stream was located behind the earthen wall, approximately half a meter away, matching the continuous water flow sound Ryan reported throughout captivity. The technical team also simulated interior light levels based on recovered electrical wiring and solar light fragments, determining the system could only produce on-off cycles of several hours depending on battery charge, corresponding to the circadian desynchronization Ryan exhibited. Analysis of residual food in empty cans estimated extremely low provisioning levels, with long shelf life items of minimal nutritional value typically used for stockpiling rather than sustenance. Combined with Ryan's prolonged vitamin deficiency, reduced bone density, and restricted mobility indicators, this confirmed multi-year confinement under conditions of both light deprivation and malnutrition. Using the carved notches on the wooden board in the tunnel, the analysis team constructed a timeline chart. The total number of notches corresponded to a day count aligning with the period from Ryan's October 2016 disappearance to his March 2023 appearance in Bryson City. Although absolute precision could not be confirmed due to possible variations in notching behavior across phases, the volume clearly indicated multi-year timekeeping consistent with medical reports and captivity-induced aging signs. Integrating data from all mechanical, biological, and environmental evidence, the team reconstructed the tunnel's operational model, maximum movement radius of approximately 1.9 meters from the shackle anchor. Light cycles dependent on solar-charged batteries, periodic small engine noise, matching the mini-generator Ryan described, and humidity. Packed earth surfaces and thermal stability consistent with a semi-subterranean structure. When all elements were input into the 3D model and matched against Ryan's statements, compatibility reached approximately 95%, far exceeding the threshold required to conclude this was the site of his long-term confinement. The reconstruction matched not only spatial proportions and physical conditions, but also the captivity mechanism, including movement restriction, light cycle control, and complete victim dependence on offender-provided food and water. This provided legal and technical grounds to conclude that the discovered tunnel structure was the location where Ryan was held for the majority of his 7-year disappearance, with all forensic data and victim testimony converging on a single unified crime scene entity. After the reconstruction model solidified the direct linkage between the underground tunnel and Ryan's statements, the investigative team shifted to priority target surveillance of Thomas Redden to gather behavioral data and additional evidence. A 3-week surveillance plan was established around Redden's remote cabin near the northern shore of Fontana Lake, using camouflaged long-range cameras, directional audio recording devices, and rotating observation teams to avoid detection. Redden's cabin was in a hard-to-access location, accessible only by a narrow footpath and surrounded by dense terrain, consistent with his reclusive lifestyle description. During the first week, observation teams noted that Redden left the cabin at irregular hours and often disappeared into old-growth forest without carrying typical hunting gear or everyday items. Cross-referencing routes with long-range camera coordinate data revealed his travel directions aligned with the area surrounding the ravine where the tunnel was previously discovered, despite the site being several kilometers from the cabin and lacking any ordinary living rationale for visits there. In the second week, Redden was recorded carrying a long canvas bag and an object shaped like a folding shovel, moving deep into the forest in the same direction. Although close tailing was avoided to prevent alerting him, the team marked the timing and coordinates for comparison with prior activity maps. In the third week, Redden again left the cabin early in the morning and returned before dark, this time carrying items potentially related to underground structure maintenance, such as small coils of wire, a toolbox, and a small-capacity plastic container. These repeated activities reinforced the assessment that he continued to access or inspect the area tied to the confinement site. After collecting sufficient behavioral data and confirming the suspect routinely operated alone, with minimal communication and no apparent assistance from others, the FBI, in coordination with NPS-ESB, decided to proceed with a controlled arrest. On a morning when Redden had just returned to the cabin after a forest trip, law enforcement deployed an arrest team using simultaneous approach tactics from 2 directions to prevent the suspect from fleeing into the deep woods where he held superior terrain knowledge. When intercepted at the cabin door, Redden did not resist vigorously but displayed confusion and denied any involvement, matching the behavioral analysis team's prior predictions. The cabin was secured and searched, pursuant to a pre-prepared court warrant based on forensic evidence. During the search, investigators seized a padlock key matching the size and shape of the one found in the tunnel. Preliminary testing showed it could unlock the padlock recovered from the scene. Additionally, they found a marked forest map with hand-drawn notations at the exact LiDAR anomaly coordinates, along with other markings in remote forested areas outside popular trails. Further items seized from the cabin included a digging tool set consisting of a folding shovel, wooden mallet, and material bags consistent with the construction traces identified in the tunnel. All evidence was sealed and entered into the case file to strengthen the direct connection between Redden and the discovered confinement structure, marking a critical transition from surveillance to criminal prosecution phase. The federal trial of Thomas Redden opened in the Western District of North Carolina after nearly a year of investigation and case consolidation, with charges including serious felonies, kidnapping across federal land, unlawful long-term imprisonment, torture resulting in severe bodily injury, and aggravated assault. Federal prosecutors presented the evidence chain in forensic sequence, beginning with DNA analysis from the padlock and shackles in the tunnel, showing Redden's DNA repeatedly appearing on 3 distinct surfaces with absolute match certainty, while completely ruling out cross-contamination. Next, prosecutors introduced the footwear impression report, proving the sole pattern imprinted on the tunnel floor matched the boot type Redden purchased in the year of Ryan's disappearance, and material analysis demonstrated that all screws, wiring, and solar light fragments in the tunnel originated from commercial transactions linked to Redden. When presenting the 3D tunnel model, prosecutors demonstrated a 95% match with Ryan's statements regarding room dimensions, light cycles, water flow sounds, and movement restriction mechanisms, while citing floor wear marks, the day count board, and Ryan's physical injuries as corroborating a 7-year captivity timeline. Prosecutors also presented 3 weeks of surveillance data showing Redden's frequent travel to the precise tunnel coordinates despite no plausible living reason, along with cabin-seized evidence, the padlock key that opened the tunnel lock, the forest map marked at the anomaly site, and the digging tool set consistent with the tunnel construction method identified through geological analysis. Defense counsel attempted to argue that Redden's DNA could have been planted at the scene, that the tunnel could have been built by someone else, or that Ryan's descriptions were unreliable after years of captivity. But these arguments were swiftly rebutted when prosecutors highlighted the independent, continuous, and non-coincidental evidence chain. The defense presented no physical evidence to refute Redden's presence in the tunnel or his connection to the mechanical and biological evidence. After the jury reviewed the full captivity process, including forensic timeline, behavioral data, tunnel analysis, and medical injuries, they concluded the evidence met the beyond reasonable doubt standard for all 4 charges. Following 2 days of deliberation, the jury formally found Thomas Redden guilty. At sentencing, the federal judge emphasized the prolonged brutality spanning years, the systematic preparation, and the absolute control Redden imposed on the victim. Assessing the defendant's conduct as presenting an extremely high risk of recidivism and posing a grave threat to public safety in national forest areas, the court sentenced Thomas Redden to life without parole. Life imprisonment without possibility of parole under federal sentencing guidelines for kidnapping and prolonged unlawful detention on federal land. This was regarded as the maximum applicable sentence and reflected the extreme severity of the case and the enduring consequences endured by the victim throughout 7 years of lost freedom. When the trial concluded and Thomas Redden's life without parole sentence took formal effect, federal agencies conducted a comprehensive after-action review of the entire investigation to evaluate initial oversights and factors that prevented the 2016 disappearance from being recognized in its true nature. Internal analysis by NPS and FBI determined that the original SAR Phase 1 search radius was excessively narrow due to the assumption Ryan stayed on the main trail, whereas the abduction mechanism occurred off-trail in a deep ravine not prioritized in the search area. Adverse early weather, heavy rain and thick fog, erased surface traces such as drag marks and compressed soil, preventing SR teams from identifying anomalies that the scene might otherwise have revealed at the time. Additionally, in 2016, LiDAR data for the Smokies region was not yet routinely updated or of sufficient resolution to strip away anomalous structures beneath forest canopy. The absence of this technology rendered the tunnel completely undetectable during visual sweeps. Following the case resolution triggered by Ryan Walker's reappearance, NPS-ISB and FBI jointly implemented federal-level investigative improvements. High-resolution LiDAR became a mandatory tool for reviewing long-term missing persons cases on public lands, particularly in mountainous forested areas capable of concealing semi-subterranean structures. AI pattern detection algorithms were developed to identify similarities among seemingly unrelated disappearances, such as proximity to small water sources, unexplained compressed soil zones, or the pattern of vanishing without personal items left behind. Forensic environmental analysis, previously an underemphasized branch, was expanded to evaluate mechanical, geological, and microbiological traces for signs of human intervention in natural environments, especially underground structures or areas of unnatural disturbance. The long-term impact of the case was further evident when NPS officially reopened 2 additional missing persons files from 2011 and 2014 due to similar patterns with the Ryan Walker case, including disappearances near tributary streams and absence of recovered personal items. Those cases are now under review using new LiDAR technology and the forensic methods employed in breaking the Redding case. SAR protocols at Great Smoky Mountains were revised to expand standard search radii, integrate digital terrain data from the outset, and enable earlier redirection of investigations upon signs of third-party intervention. The Ryan Walker file, originally classified as an accident, has become an official case study in FBI and NPS-ISB training programs on prolonged missing persons investigations, highlighting the critical roles of forensic data, LiDAR technology, and pattern analysis in solving cases occurring in vast and complex natural environments. The story of Ryan Walker and his 7-year captivity in a secret underground tunnel deep in the old-growth forest of Great Smoky Mountains is not only a rare criminal case, but also reflects an important reality in contemporary American life. Despite modern infrastructure, professional SAR forces, and advanced investigative technology, vast national forest areas still pose risks to those who explore nature alone. Ryan's disappearance without leaving any personal items, combined with the initial error of search teams focusing solely on the main trail instead of expanding into seldom visited ravines, delivers a clear lesson on the importance of sharing hiking itineraries, always carrying navigation devices, and maintaining periodic contact. From the detail that Redding targeted solo hikers and exploited dense forest terrain to conceal his actions, the story reminds us that even areas considered safe, such as national parks, can harbor human-caused dangers beyond wildlife or natural accidents. Investigative advances, such as LiDAR for detecting buried structures or AI for identifying disappearance patterns, demonstrate that technology can resolve cases once thought unsolvable, but technology always arrives after the fact. Prevention remains paramount. From Ryan's confinement in a dark, malnourished, and completely isolated space, we see clearly the fragility of human beings when stripped of freedom, a value American society has always held dear in the spirit of rule of law and human dignity. The greatest lesson is not only for investigative agencies, but for every individual: prepare thoroughly before each trip. Never underestimate the wilderness, and remember that small choices, such as notifying others of your route, avoiding solo travel, or carrying emergency gear, can mark the boundary between safety and vanishing without a trace. Thank you for following this haunting case breakdown of Ryan Walker. If you found this content helpful, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next real investigative file. See you in the next video, where we'll continue exploring cases that force America to re-examine how it protects its own safety.